June sat on the edge of the old wooden bridge, her legs dangling over the slow-moving creek below. The sky above was velvet black, speckled with billions of glittering stars like salt scattered across a tablecloth. She pulled her sweater tighter around her shoulders against the slight chill of the spring evening. The annual Bridgewater Carnival was in full swing in the adjacent field. Carousel music tinkled on the breeze, mingling with delighted shrieks from kids on the tilt-a-whirl and barkers hawking cotton candy and buttery popcorn. The Ferris will turn slow, ponderous circles, its colorful lights reflecting in the dark water. But June was content to sit apart from it all, in her spot on the bridge, the place that was hers and Augie's. They had met here exactly 10 years ago tonight, both 16 years old and volunteering at the carnival for extra credit. He was funny and thoughtful and had unruly chestnut hair that June ached to run her fingers through. They started as friends but soon became more, stealing kisses behind the ring toss booth and holding hands while strolling the midway. After graduation, everyone assumed Augie and June would get married. They were that couple, attached at the hip, finishing each other's sentences, more in love than most people find in a lifetime. Augie proposed to June on this very bridge, going down on one knee and opening a tiny velvet box holding his grandmother's diamond ring. June had never felt joy like she did in that moment. But then the war started and Augie enlisted, like so many other brave young men in their town. He would serve his country proudly, he told June, but he promised to come back to her, to marry her in the little white church on Maple Street where her parents had wed. June smiled through her tears and said she'd wait for him, forever if she had to. They exchanged letters full of love and longing, Augie detailing his experiences in basic training, then from his post overseas in a place June could barely pronounce. She wrote him about her new job as a teacher, regaling him with funny stories of her second-grade students and how much she missed his steady presence by her side. She sent care packages full of homemade cookies, paperback mystery novels, and rolls of film for him to capture photos to send back to her. As the months turned into years, Augie's letters became more sporadic. June tried not to let her worry and fear creep into her own correspondence. She knew he was facing unspeakable things but didn't want to add to his burdens. She remained unfailingly optimistic in her letters, filling the pages with hometown gossip, upbeat reports about her students, and always ending with affirmations of her steadfast love for him. When Augie's tour ended, he surprised June by showing up unannounced at her classroom door, still in his fatigues, his hair buzzed short. June let out a cry of pure elation and ran into his arms, her bewildered students cheering as their beloved teacher was twirled around by the mysterious man in uniform. But as much as June tried to pick up where they left off, Augie wasn't the same sunny-natured boy who had left her 3 years prior. He had a distant look in his eyes, jumping at sudden noises, disappearing on long walks by himself. War had changed him in ineffable ways. June was patient and gentle, never pressing Augie to talk about what he'd experienced if he didn't want to. Some nights he woke up screaming, his pillow damp with sweat and tears. June held him until the shaking stopped. They set a wedding date for the following spring, sending out ivory invitations embossed with doves carrying ribbons in their beaks. June found the perfect dress, all delicate lace and tiny seed pearls. She knew in her bones that if they could just make it to their wedding day, everything would fall into place. 2 weeks before they were supposed to say, "I do," June found a note from Augie on their kitchen table. "I'm sorry, June Bug," it read in his familiar slanted scrawl. "I thought I could do this, be the man you need, the man you deserve. But I see now that I'm too broken. I won't drag you down with me. Just know that I have loved you since the moment I first saw you on that bridge. I will always love you, but I have to let you go. Forgive me, Augie." June was inconsolable when he disappeared. She called in sick to work for a week, unable to muster the energy to drag herself out of bed. Her mother and sister took turns bringing her meals that sat untouched on the nightstand. Everyone told June to put it behind her, that she was better off without Augie anyway. "He didn't deserve you," her best friend Millie said briskly as she helped June pack up Augie's clothes to donate. "Any man who would abandon his fiancée like that is a coward." But June never gave up hope. She knew that Augie was hurting, that it wasn't cowardice but pain and trauma that made him run. He had experienced horrors she could never understand. She could forgive him for that. The years passed and June settled into a quiet rhythm. She channeled her energy into her students, pouring love and care into shaping their young minds. She made peace with her life as it was, finding fulfillment in small joys. A really good cup of coffee, a favorite student's high marks, a Jane Austen novel that could still make her swoon. But a small part of her never gave up on her belief that fate would bring Augie back to her one day. It had to. What they had was once in a lifetime. That kind of love doesn't just evaporate. Now, on the 10-year anniversary of the day they met, June kept vigil on their bridge, just like she did every year. She gazed up at the canopy of stars, picking out the constellations Augie had taught her: Orion's Belt, the Big Dipper, the North Star that could guide any explorer home. Maybe this would be the year he finally came back. "June Bug?" A soft voice came from behind her, barely a whisper. June whirled around and let out a choked sob. It was Augie, older, a little grayer, but still her Augie. He stood at the other end of the bridge, one hand gripping the wooden railing like it was the only thing holding him up. June was on her feet in an instant, running to him and throwing her arms around his neck. He smelled like pine needles and would smoke. June breathed him in, hardly believing this was real. "You came back," she said, her face buried in his shoulder. "I always knew you would." "I'm so sorry, June," Augie said, his voice breaking. "I never should have left. I was just so lost, broken. I couldn't stand the thought of being a burden to you, of dragging you down with the darkness I was sinking into." June pulled back and took his face in her hands, studying the new lines around his eyes and mouth. "You could never be a burden. I just wanted to help you carry it. I would have carried it all if you let me." "I know that now," Augie said. "It's taken me this long to start healing, to get my head on straight. There are some things I'll never fully recover from. But I finally realized, with a lot of time and therapy, that you're my light, June. You always were. I was a fool to run away from that." June pressed her forehead against his. "You're here now. That's all that matters." Augie took a shuddering breath. "Do you think you can forgive me? For being gone so long? For leaving without a real goodbye?" June kissed him then, soft and sweet. "I forgave you a long time ago." She took his hand and led him out to the center of the bridge, to the very spot where he had proposed all those years ago. The sounds of the carnival faded away. The stars blurred into streaks of light. They were 16 again, young and dizzily in love. "Do you remember what you said to me that night?" June asked. "Right before you asked me to be your wife?" Augie smiled, his eyes far away. "I said that the stars were so bright, it was like they made a bridge just for us. A bridge of stars that would always lead me back to you." June squeezed his hand. "And here you are." He brushed a lock of hair behind her ear. "Here I am, finally home." They turned their faces to the sky, to their bridge of stars. No more running, no more hiding from the love they were meant for. They had wasted so much time already. June rested her head on Augie's shoulder. She didn't know what the future held, if they would still get married in that little white church, if Augie would keep taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But she did know one thing for certain. She would hold his hand through all of it, wherever this bridge of stars took them, because that's what love does. It leads you home. It carries you through the hard parts. It never wavers. Not the true kind of love anyway. The love that is planted so deep in your bones you can't tell where it ends and you begin. Augie and June had that kind of love, and even the worst kinds of darkness couldn't touch it. It was theirs, inviolable. The carnival music played on. The tilt-a-wheel spun. Couples laughed hand in hand. And above it all, the stars made a bridge, steady and sure, ready to carry the lovers into whatever awaited them next.